Good afternoon. Let's see. Yes, good afternoon. Today is Friday, October 23rd, 2015. My name is Dr. Rashnice Candy Tate. I'm with the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, Atlanta branch, and we're at Atlanta Metropolitan State College in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm interviewing with
Monet Harris, a student at Atlanta Metropolitan College.
And we're here today with Mr. Singletary. Thank you for speaking with us today.
You're welcome.
And Monet is going to ask the questions primarily, and if I have something I want to follow up with, I'll jump in.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Singletary. Speak. Okay, Mr. Singletary. Let's start off with where and when were you born?
I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in 1966.
Okay. Who are or were your parents, and what were their occupations?
My father was a electrician, and his name was Jesse James Singletary, Jr. And my mother was a post office worker, and her name is Maddie Singletary.
Maddie Singletary. That's
And I
nice.
called you Mr. Singletary. It's Leander?
Leander Singletary.
Leander Singletary.
Who are or were your siblings, name, and also gender? And did any of them serve in the military?
I have 4 brothers and 1 sister. My oldest sister, she's the oldest. Her name is Casey Lenore, and her brother named Tony, Michael, Chris, and Jesse the third. And my brother Christopher Singletary, he served in the military for about maybe 4 years.
Which branch?
The U.S. Army.
U.S. Army.
And where did you fall in the birth order?
I'm the knee, what they call the knee baby. I'm the 5th child of 6.
Okay. And would he be your older brother?
He would be my older brother. Yeah, he's 1 year older than me.
1 year older than you?
Yes.
Would you say that when he joined, you wanted to join?
No, actually, I joined before he did.
Mm.
He came after me.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's really nice. Okay. What were you doing before you started serving?
Before I started serving, I graduated from high school, and I was working in a local fast food restaurant, just kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with myself after graduation from high school.
Okay. So we're gonna get started with your early days in the service.
Mm-hmm.
Which branch of the military did you serve?
I served in the U.S. Army.
Army. Okay. Did you enlist or?
Yes, I was an enlisted soldier. Back in 1985, I enlisted in the service in January.
January 1985.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why did you choose that Pacific branch when you enlisted?
There was no rhyme or reason for me choosing the United States Army. I grew up in the ROTC program at Dillard High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It had actually a Air Force Reserve ROTC, and I started to go to the Air Force, but I just wanted to get out of that environment very quickly as possible, and I went to the Air Force, but the Air Force they kind of seemed a little sluggish in their service, in particular what I wanted to do. So I just walked right next door to the Army recruiters and said, "Hey, what you got for me?" And signed up, and rest is history.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay. What happened when you departed for training camp and during your early days of training?
Okay, back in 1985, a lot of things have changed. Not so much as far as basic training now is still kind of the same, but some different philosophy changes in the psychological portion of how they train you and get you to the next level. When I went in, it was in January. You got to remember that. Okay, and so I went up to New Jersey, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to New Jersey in January. So that was a shock, and all I had was a pair of jeans on, a light jacket, and a shirt, and so I was introduced to. I've seen snow before, kind of played around it before, but I was introduced to extreme cold weather, what we call extreme cold weather training in the Army. From just like overnight, coming from a tropical climate to then. In basic training, that portion of it, was quick and fast for me. I didn't really think about it too much because I was too cold all the time. So I just kind of blanked myself out and just went with the flow on everything as far as what they were trying to tell me to do. So I just did everything they told me to do, tried to do it quickly, tried to do it right the first time so I can get somewhere where I can warm up.
Okay, do you recall any of your instructors? If so, what were they like?
I recall you kind of never forget your drill sergeants, kind of sort of. Sanchez, guy named I don't remember his first name, but his last name was Sanchez, Drill Sergeant Sanchez, and Drill Sergeant Mays. Mm-hmm. They were infantry guys, so if you know anything about the infantry, so they're always kind of high strung and upbeat and everything like that. And so they were very good educators. They were very good teachers. They were very good mentors. Despite the fact that the relationship we say was a drill sergeant, but when you look back on it, they were actually great guys to kind of get me started in the military. They always talk loud, talk forcefully, and got your attention real quick.
So I don't know if she knows what infantry.
Infantry. Okay. Infantry is actually the military. It has a whole different components. A lot of people think everybody in the military does the same thing. Now there's a doctrine that says all soldiers are riflemen, and that's true. But infantrymen are your true riflemen. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who actually really engage the main portion of the combat arms, the main portion that engages the enemy. You have service support, you have combat service support, and then combat. Mm-hmm. And they are your combat, following that combat umbrella of the United States Army. So infantrymen, they're the ones who got there, ones you see on TV in World War II and all those old movies that don't really document and tell you exactly how the life of a soldier is. Mm-hmm. But those are the ones you see, and everybody kind of antiquates those soldiers with every soldier in the Army, and that's not true. Every soldier is not the same as far as what they do on the battlefield. So, and some of them don't really engage on the battlefield. They're service support or combat support, and that's a different category. So, infantry is your fighting force.
Your fighting force.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you receive any special training?
Any special training?
Mm-hmm.
All the training is special.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to kind of really, when you ask that question to a soldier, you got to qualify what you're talking about special, because each MOS has some special commendations or specialarities of that particular MOS. An MOS is a military occupational skill. Mm-hmm. Every occupation that you can imagine in what we call civilian society, and things that everybody do all day, from business to restaurant ownership to all this stuff. All these things are incorporated in the Army's occupational series of skills, and so everyone has some type of special skill. I started off as a mechanic, so I branched off to recovery. Mm-hmm. And what a recovery specialist is, same thing as when you break down on the side of the road, and the truck the AAA they come get you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were the AAA on the battlefield as far as a recovery specialist, but I was still mechanic. Mm-hmm. When I transferred over to Army bands, there's a specialty identifier. that says you're the top of your class. So I had that identifier in the Army band. Only about 5% of the Army bandsmen actually had that designation, that qualifier back then. Now they changed the structure around and the training, so everybody's kind of at that high level, plays at that high level. So that's the special qualities, things that I've had.
Okay.
And the Army band is music band or
Yes,
what? Okay.
Army bands. And with the Army bands, just to kind of elaborate on that, there's if you have to know the Army to understand, even people in the Army don't understand Army bands. Army bands has a couple of special bands that work up in D.C. called the President's Own, and those guys are totally different from the Army musicians. Not totally different, but different from the Army musicians as far as their mission and what they're required to do for the regular Army, for the bulk of your Army. So almost every major installation has an Army band. Hold on. And so every installation has an army band, they play primarily for that general officer, and it supports that general officer and the installation that they manage and run with music. So.
Okay. Would you say because it kind of sounds like the Army band is pretty important, is it?
The Army band is all of the MOSs are important. Army band is particularly important because it provides that spirited core for the troops. Back in the day, the band would parade in front of the soldiers before they went out to war, and so Army band still kind of plays that role. It still does that same traditional aspect of psychological motivation for soldiers and whatnot, and dependents and family. And they also go out and engage the communities where soldiers can't be, and it's not really practical for soldiers to be. The Army band is there telling the Army story. Okay. So they're very much diplomats and ambassadors, in Japan and Germany and Korea, all across the United States, for those little remote areas where no one will see a soldier other than somebody that just kind of went in the Army or the Marines or wherever and came out, and they see that one particular soldier. They never see a big group of soldiers. So the Army band gets in those communities and engages with those communities and uplifts those communities as well, and let them know, hey, we thank you for your support, and also for you have family members that are in the military, thank you for their service as well.
Okay.
About to move on. Can I ask a follow-up question?
No, fine.
So, did you play in high school, and what instrument?
Yes, I played music in high school, all through high school. Again, I was one of those guys that I was a good musician. So I was all state, and I played tuba. In high school, all through high school.
I was a choir kid in high school. I did honors choir, so I went to state and everything. So
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you're competitive too.
Well, I mean, it's competitive, but it's just a love of music. When you're a musician, you just have a passion for music. And when I went into the military, I went in not necessarily under duress, but it felt like duress to me. And so I quickly enlisted and followed what that recruiter said, and he promised me gold on the mountain and everything like that. And as a mechanic, I thought it would be a good skill to have once I get out of the military, which I only planned to do 4 years. And so I decided to go in as a mechanic, learn those skills, get that tuition money to go to college, and then come back and do great things in the community. I loved the Army. It was a nice, pace, even though, the mechanic's life was kind of tough. I had these skills, so I still had that burning desire to continue playing my music. And so the first opportunity I got before I re-enlisted, I went over to the Army band and said, hey, can I grab one of those tubas and audition for you? They kind of shied me away, then, they're like, hey, whatever, guy, And so finally it gave me an opportunity to play and audition, and they was like, okay, we got to get this guy in here. So I went into what is called the OJT program in the Army band. So our OJT played with them until they found me a slot for school. Okay. Every time every MOS, military occupational skills, has slots, and every year, the Army goes around and say, okay, we have so many people we can enlist into the Army, and so what they do is, they'll slot those different schools based on the recruitment, and also the need for what the Army needs, the critical needs for the Army as far as what they need, like they may need a whole bunch of infantrymen. So they'll build those billets and those slots for those infantrymen, and recruiters go out and say, okay, we need so many, there's so many of that to fill the forces up due to retirements, people retiring, or people just ETSing or medically retiring and things of that nature. So they build up those acquisitions for Army soldiers through that way. So I had to wait for a slot to open up to be a musician before I can go to school.
That's interesting. So it's like people were like on a waiting list to go to school.
Absolutely.
I would never I would never thought that. That's interesting. So how did you adapt to the military life, and also include physical regimen and
Barracks.
barracks? I just asked about that. The barracks, and food and social life.
Okay. The physical regimen, you mean like physical fitness and things like that? The barracks life.
So this is still talking about your time and training.
Training.
Yeah.
Okay. So we go to training. Let's go to this. Now, see, some soldiers will tell you, horror stories of this and this because they never really, they were veterans and they went from one point to the next, and then the time frame of them going into the Army, you're going to have different stories. You're going to have, from the guys that just went in and, just got out after 2 years or maybe 3 years or 4 years, versus a guy that has a lifetime, I spent a lifetime in the military. So basic training for me. Basic training was fast, and they had to impact a lot of things in a short amount of time. So, and I say that because the misconception for Army soldiers is basic training is all what we do all day long, every day in the military, and that's not true. Basic training is 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, you go to your AIT, which can be from 2 weeks to a year. And then once you finish that, you're on permanent party, which is totally different, just like getting up in the morning, going to work every day. There's no difference from a person who is not in the military versus a person that is in the military. The only difference is, it's really not that much different, because some people get up early at 4 o'clock in the morning, like people that in the food industries and stuff like that. They get up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're at work. Soldiers, in most time, at least three times a day, 3 times a week, or maybe 4 times a week, get up early in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and go do PT. So I got to clarify that. I want to make sure we understand that, because there's a big misconception that all soldiers do is run around in boots, and we don't run in boots. Run around in boots, screaming and hollering all day long, out in the woods, getting muddy and dirty, and that's what Army is. That's totally not true. Okay, so basic training is running around doing all those things every day. You don't leave the barracks. The barracks is where you live and where you stay. So PT, I didn't have too much problem with physical training. We call it PT. Didn't have any problems with that at all. When I first started in the military, I was a young kid, so I was just had a lot of energy, and I learned a lot of stuff as far as physical fitness. Some things I got better at, things that I never done before, and so that was an interesting process for me, because it introduced you to all kind of different physical fitness requirements and tests and things like that, and you're testing yourself continuously, and you're always doing push-ups, you're always doing sit-ups, because drill sergeant always finds something wrong, and that's part of the training. The part of the training is to find something wrong so they can build you up, because you got to remember, some people that come into the Army had no physical training whatsoever before they enter the Army, and they can't do 1, 2, 3 push-ups. And the physical demands of what you're going to do, depending on your military occupational specialty, and there's a standard that the Army wants you to be at, all soldiers to be at, in physical fitness. And that's why they have those physical fitness tests with the scores. So I wasn't too bad. I was pretty good, and eventually I used to I got to the point where I was maxing the PT test, and that score was like 300 back then. You get 300 on your PT test, and I was getting 300 plus on the PT test. So you get good and you get better, and you just challenge yourself. And I was one of those persons who always challenged myself to do better. Food. The dining facility was called the mess hall back then because they changed it to dining facility because people got kind of socially conscious. It's not a mess, it is a mess hall. It's a time tradition on. There's a reason why they called it a mess hall, and then that's a different story. That's a history story, but I don't want to get into that right now.
So when you get a second, or if you'd like to share with us, we don't mind.
Okay, well, I can tell you real quick. I mean, the short story is, back in the day, I don't remember when, but back in the day, soldiers would come in and they would eat their food. They're soldiers, knights and those kind of guys and like that. And they would sit down and they'd say, "Hey, this is a fine mess." Mess actually means dining cuisine. And so they would say, "This is a fine mess." So we changed it to mess hall. And then the public opinion and people, how people say, "Oh, they guys complain about something, but it's not really bad." They just want to complain and have a story to talk about. "Oh, this terrible, that's terrible," whatever, So the dining facility became the mess hall. You see those commercials where you see the soldiers out there and they throwing goop and gop on the trays and things. That's mess. So it changed, the connotation of it changed from the mess hall being a fine dining cuisine to just mess. So that's why they call it a mess hall. So they changed the name because they didn't want that connotation to be out there to dining facility, which is, they are truly dining facility. So you go in a dining facility in the military right now, I mean, it's laid out. You name it, they got it, and it's great food. But in basic training, though, basic training is set up for you to eat and go. So you got to imagine this long lines wrapped around this restaurant, dining hall, or mess facility, long lines, people standing right up on each other. The entire dining facility filled with hundreds of soldiers, and you got to feed them within a particular time frame because you got to get the training. So that rapid fire feeding, that's what dining is like in basic training when I went through. I'm not sure exactly if it's like that now because I haven't been in to observe and see what they're doing now, but that's how it was in basic training. So you had if you were lucky. See, they had groups like my drill sergeants had a time frame to get us to the dining facility. That was his time to get us in there and have us fed and then get the training. So if we missed that 20-minute opportunity, you got 20 minutes. Okay.
For how many people?
For
give her the scope.
A battalion could have up to 300 to 600 soldiers.
And you got to feed them in 20 minutes.
You got to feed all of them. No, not all of them in 20 minutes, but a platoon would have like 30, maybe 30. So I was in a platoon that had 30, but our 20. But suppose everything get backed up. So we're in line, and our 20 minutes is clicking, continuously clicking. And so by the time you get up there, the last person get up there, you only have 2 minutes to eat, and you got to go because the next people got to get in, and they got to keep them tables freed up so people can eat. And so that was that kind of rapid fire feeding and basic training. Basic training back in the day, they changed the barracks situation to where it's like a college dorm for single soldiers. But not in basic training. Basic training is a whole bunch of beds and big old open bays, and everybody's sleeping in those bays. So, and you have to keep the place clean for obvious reasons. First of all, one reason is they're training you how to take care of hygiene. Even field hygiene, take care of your hygiene. That's very important, very big, and they don't you don't mess around with that. The other thing is because of the hygiene, they want to keep the facility clean to keep out diseases and things of that nature, and because people coming from all over the place, of course they get inoculated with vaccines and stuff like that, but you still want to have everything clean. Dress right, what they call dress right, just it means everything's all in an orderly manner as prescribed by them, and you have to follow charts, so that your wall locker had to look a certain way, Your bed had to be made a certain way. Your floors had to have a certain shine to them. All your boots and everything that you had out had to be clean, even though you're not wearing them. Nothing's out of place. And that was for good order, and also to teach you discipline, and teach you teamwork. So barracks life, some people adapted well to it, some people didn't. I was in ROTC. I already knew what to expect when I went to basic training, so I adapted well. The only problem that you have is those inner conflicts with other people from different places and stuff like that, and then you got a whole bunch of guys in there. You got an alpha male, you got the beta, you got all these people in all these different attitudes, and everybody trying to buck for a position, and so that can create some problems. So it's all about you tapering yourself and telling yourself and figuring out where you fit in on the team, and who's the designated leader by either your social, your inner norm, or by the leadership, the drill sergeants. So in that conflict, there's always a conflict there, battle, and you have to really learn how to be a leader or a follower and a team player. So it just depends on what your role is that given day. So that's how it was in basic training, as far as the barracks, dining facility, and physical training.
Social life?
So there's no social life. Your boots nowadays they don't polish boots because they go to different uniforms, and I think back in I can't remember. I don't want to tell you a story. I just can't remember. In the 90s, we changed the boots around just before the Iraqi War. Not Iraqi, but Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So early 90s, they started changing the boots around. Well, you didn't have to polish your boots anymore. So they don't wear boots that you have to polish, and your low quarters already have a shine on them already. But back in the day, that's what you're cleaning a weapon that you never fired before. They're just getting you acquainted with it, and we don't walk around with weapons. The weapons are all controlled, put into a storage room, and they locked up. Give us something to do, they will take the weapons out. We don't carry weapons with magazines and loaded. So people think that's another thing that people don't understand and know about. We don't have loaded weapons walking around on the Army base, just freely walking around with weapons and ammo. That's ludicrous. That could be chaos. So to give you something to do, that was your social life. Either you can sit down there, you have an opportunity to sit down, write a letter, maybe make a phone call, polish your boots, and clean your wall locker. Study your smart book. We got a little smart book. The smart book is all the stuff that you had to learn. Everything that you had to learn while you're in basic training, they gave you these books and things. And you had to, these are the things we're going to study on the next day. The next day, you had to study that stuff. So if you didn't study it, you're not going to know. The drill sergeant going to quiz you on it, and when he put the material in front of you for you to execute, because everything is theory, or reading, practice, a little bit more theory, practice, and test. So you had to get your hands-on training, get all these things done, but you had to do the reading first. And if you didn't do it, you can tell. So.
Before we move on, you mentioned early on, so for you personally, moving from the south to the north for training and just dealing with the weather. And were there any other kind of north-south social differences that you had to acclimate to?
Now, in basic training, you don't get a chance to really, deal with that, because everybody's got to be the same. You really don't, you know who's from here, because you start talking from. It's in AIT where the problems actually start, and then when you get into your permanent party, because basic training, everybody's got their head shaved. You don't know who's who, and it's you just there. But there was no clashes between south, north, east, west, or anything like that. You just kind of had to deal with what you were given. And you can tell some people, because there was no polarized groups in that time either, because everybody was in the same predicament. Either you do or you don't. That's why the drill sergeant was all on. It didn't give you a chance to create those inner conflict things that could happen between people from different areas of the country and things like that. So everything was kind of you had to depend on somebody. So I remember this one guy. He was an old biker guy. you know, and he thought he was going to have a problem fitting in and everything like that. But once he found out that we were all the same, in the same boat, in the same predicament, he kind of, formulated his attitude and his social things and things that he used to do to the group. So everything pushes you to that group when you're in basic training. So socialization, there's really no socialization, but there was, we knew that, this guy was from Bronx in New York, this guy was from Iowa, this guy was from Wisconsin or Mississippi or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of knew that and everything like that, but we didn't have time. You don't have time to really get down and I want to know you and what's your family name and all this other stuff. You just didn't have that kind of time on your hands. So.
But when you left basic training.
In basic training, you got a little bit more socialization. Then you find those pockets of polarization groups, polarized groups, and that kind of stuff.
Any particular personal instance come to mind that you can share?
Well, I have to go progress from basic training because, like I said, basic training is just a small part of your time. You don't even, it goes by so quick.
Mm-hmm.
But when I first got to my first duty station, that was Germany, in Karlsruhe, Germany. I was a single soldier, so I didn't qualify to live off the post or anything like that in my own house and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a single soldier, so I stayed in the barracks. And the barracks are different. In Germany, the barracks are totally different because there's a European style. It's built on European army, a German army, and everything like that. So we occupied this concern, what's called a concern, in Germany, Karlsruhe, Germany. And it was a big building, offices and stuff were downstairs where the first sergeant, the commander, and all those guys, admin, human resources type people, they kind of work supply. Then 2 and 3rd story, second and the third story was the barrack space. When I went in, we all kind of pretty much got there at the same time. A guy named Richard Carlson, a guy named, I forgot what Shamlin's first name was, a guy named Shamlin, and a guy named Foss.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, and then one guy named Chris Walker. Chris Walker was from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just a typical New Yorker.
Real aggressive.
Real aggressive. He's African American.
Mm-hmm.
Shamlin was from West Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
white guy.
Mm-hmm.
Carlson was from Iowa, white guy, and as well as Foss was from Iowa, white
Mm-hmm.
guy. Okay, you in the same room, and the room is a little bit big, maybe a little bit bigger than this room right here. You got a bed there, bed there, bed there, bed there, and bed there, and you have your wall locker space and everything like that. So your little cubicle is not even separated, but there's your space though.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got to imagine, this is in 1985. Okay, and so headphones and music and all this kind of stuff was totally different from what y'all got right now. People used to have the big stereo,
Your
big
boom box.
speakers, big old
Mm-hmm.
boom boxes with speakers about that high. And we had money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let people fool you when you're a PFC in the Army and you don't have anything to do with your money. You go buy a stereo and a big old TV and all the you buy that kind of stuff because you don't have anything. It's a lot of money for those guys. Well, at least for me back then, it was a lot of money coming from where I came from. And so when we got in that room, when you go in that room, at first everybody was kind of like looking at each other because here you had like Richard Carson and the three white guys never really went to school or really knew any African Americans.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't socialize with African Americans when they went to school.
Mm-hmm.
One guy was from Iowa. He said there was maybe one black person that he's seen in the school in his entire school time. From 9th grade to him graduating.
Mm-hmm.
Chris was kind of the opposite. He was he was from New York, so he never really dealt with Caucasians. Me, I was a little different. I dealt with it, all of that, but on a day-to-day basis, at the end of the day, didn't really see any white people around my neighborhood anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But in the classrooms at school, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you had that dynamic in that one room. All that culture come together in one spot, and believe it or not, we all coexisted very well. We didn't have any problems as far as interracial conflicts or anything like that. It was all a learning process because we were all. I think we were all, because we went through the military, because we went through basic training in AIT, and we got to start knowing people for face value instead of what we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
It became a thing where you accepted that person and let's hear your story, and their compromise of what they expect from you, or how they're going to deal with you, is based on your word, what you said and what you do or didn't do, keeping your promise or keeping your word, and just being a decent person, even though we had different places that we came from, and even though we had different ideas,
Mm-hmm.
we were open to kind of listen and accept the other person. So that's kind of how we kind of got along. So it was really, I mean, Army. I think Army is one of the most valuable places, or a good study for people getting along, just anybody from anywhere, because I haven't seen too many organizations that has that mix, that ratio of races and ethnic groups together, that actually get along and work together for a common cause. I haven't seen that in any other place but the Army, and that's just my feelings with it.
I think that's actually interesting, because really, me personally, growing up and hearing about the military, and I know a few people that's my age that are in the military, and I know people that were in the military. It wasn't like, never really mentioned how well everybody coexisted with each other, rather than they really kind of brought up the bad stuff, the racisms, or just really interesting situations.
I mean, there are racial issues in the military. I won't sugarcoat that fact. There are some pockets and bad elements, especially right now. You're seeing a lot of bad elements coming through there, because we got more social media now to kind of expose that stuff. And people, the other day I was riding past somebody's house. I don't know them. I was just riding past the house, and it had American flag, it had the Georgia flag, it had a Confederate flag, and it had the Marines flag. Now, at first glance, you would think, okay, that person may be kind of racist with that Confederate flag, but you don't really know that. Sometimes it's history, because I know when we're in, you got to hear their story and what they actually talked about, and what they actually believed, and then if they were some people that converted back to running around with the Confederate flag and doing things that are antisocial or anti-American, as far as treating everybody equal, then that's their business. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's like you wouldn't expect it, from certain people if you were in the military. But in the military, when I was in the military, you didn't really see that kind of right in your face racial stuff. But there were times and things that you did feel racial tension. Certain units or certain leaders and things like that. You would feel that something just not right, and everybody can see it. But it's not uncommon at least in the Army, that it don't matter what your race were, your battle, what we call your battle buddy come from all walks of life, and that was your best in that friendship and that bonding. If it's done correctly, it's there forever. So if someone was your buddy, like I couldn't imagine somebody that I knew well in the military, come out, and we were buddy. They watching my kids and helping me out when I'm in trouble and in hard times, and vice versa with their families. Come out and wave a Confederate flag, knowing what I believe in. So it's just an interesting thing in the military that for the most part, I would say that the bonding and the camaraderie of all the peoples there is a little bit different from mainstream United States society.
Okay. And I'm going to let you move on. But what I wanted to ask was about, so we talked about men. Where were women in the military while you were, were they in barracks or
Right.
units?
Okay. Now, in basic training, the women, they were totally separate. We didn't see them. They didn't even walk, march past us, and so back in '85, the Army was still transitioning from the Vietnam era. Because, the 70s was still kind of, in the 70s, the Army kind of took a nosedive as far as respectability and things of that nature. So that's why you get a lot of people disgruntled because they came out of Vietnam and they were forced to go in, So you got to kind of picture that transformation. And when I got in, that transformation was really going back to the positive side. But you still had those bad things, because I remember, we running in PT formation or something like that. This was after basic training. They see a female soldier or female soldiers passing by, and guys hackling and catcalling and things like that to them and everything like that. But you won't see that. You won't see that today. Even though there's still some tension and pressures there with with having women in the same units and things like that. It's still, some things still kind of, but you don't see it on the surface as far as blatant, outright, just doing stuff that's malicious or disrespectful. But basic training, you didn't see female soldiers. You weren't allowed to congregate with them. You weren't allowed to talk to them. You weren't allowed to do anything. Okay, AIT. We went to school together, and it was in separate barracks. With the same same area, but in different barracks, different dormitories. And in permanent party, which is after you get out of AIT, permanent party, they're in the same dorms, not the same dorm rooms, but the same dorms and things like that. Your next door neighbor could be female soldiers. So
Okay. So we're going to move on to your time, wartime. Where did you serve?
I served with 3rd Infantry Division in Iraqi War. That's out at Fort Stewart. 3rd ID is at Fort Stewart, and also at Fort Benning. One of the headquarters is at Fort Stewart in Hinesville, Georgia. So that's where I went to Iraqi Freedom, Iraqi War in 2003. That's when I went. So
that's when you went. So before that, you hadn't served before that. So you said you went into the military in.
I went into the military in 1985.
85,
right.
And you didn't see.
Well, I didn't see any combat action until 2003. I was always training, always doing. When I was getting ready when I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, I was assigned to 9th Infantry Division, and that whole division was pretty much poised to go to the Gulf. My brother served in the Gulf, but like you say, things that people don't know about the military. All units don't go to war just because, or go to combat. Actually, the Army's in war. We're in war, but actual combat. Only select units go based on the mission, based on the combatant commander's wishes and the way he designed how to defeat the enemy. Then he pulls in those packages, what I call packages. He pulls those units that he needs to get his mission done, his or her mission. And so 9th Infantry Division was being deactivated. That means that they were going out of, they're closing that unit down. Now, when a unit closes down, it deactivates. That don't mean it goes away. The Army gets rid of it. It's just that mission for the Army is being packaged and put away. So all the soldiers disperse and go on to different assignments. But that flag can't be unfurled. So they closed that, they rolled that flag up, the 9th Infantry Division, just as I was getting to Fort Lewis when we were going to the Gulf War. And so I didn't go to that conflict. I thought I was going to go, but I didn't go.
Yeah, my godfather, he went to the Gulf War. So, well, it's a little not off topic, but not here. When you finally went to war, went into combat, that big gap, was it like, how did that kind of feel? Because it's really, you had like a big gap before you actually went into some type of combat.
And see, that's, like I say,
you
these are
felt
the
like
things.
You was losing your touch, you was younger.
No. See, that's the misconception that people get with the military. I was a career soldier. I didn't go in for a particular reason as far as, 9/11. People jumped into the Army. We're going to go and fight. Immediately fight. I don't know what their intentions were or their purpose for doing that was, even though they said it was patriotic. I got to conclude that that's what it was, and they felt an obligation to serve. I don't question that, but at the same time, their particular intention. I went in, for a particular reason. I need to get out of my environment. I want to give me some money for school because I was first generation. No one in my family went to college or anything like that, and I wanted to go to school. And the Army was doing that because I saw someone do it. They went to the military, stayed for like 3 years or something like that, and got out and went to FAMU, Florida Agricultural Mechanical University. And I wanted to do the same thing. So hey, they can do it, I can do it. So, but when I got in, I found what the Army was doing and what it was about, and just something about being a soldier I liked. So I said, I'm gonna continue on. So that big gap, when there was a lot of different things that happened, from 1985 to 2003. I just wasn't part of it. Now, when soldiers like myself, like I was in first combat support, which was a mechanic, then I switched over to combat service support as a bandman. Certain units are not going to go. Every unit is not going to go. The whole army is large. It's huge. So everybody's not going to go in the Army. So everyone's going to have gaps in between, from 1985, if you will, to 2003. Some went to Panama, some went to Gaul, some went, different places. My time was Iraqi freedom. In that time frame, though, it's always training. You're always getting prepared for whatever unit. Because you remember, I went from New Jersey. When I finished New Jersey, I stayed in New Jersey for AIT, went to Fort Lewis, for Germany, back to Texas, to Virginia, to Fort Lewis to where did I go after that? To back to Virginia, to South Carolina. I was jumping around. So each unit you go to, each post you go to, and they'll have a whole bunch of units. It's not one, like when at Fort Stewart, it's not just one unit. There's several battalions, brigades, and things of that nature, and all of them have different missions. So you got, Fort Stewart, you got 10,000 soldiers on the installation. They're not just one group. It's a whole bunch of different things. MOS structure, remember I talked about that earlier. You have your cooks, you have your drivers, you have your mechanics, you have your human resource, you have your finance, you have your judges, you have your lawyers, you have all these soldiers doing all these different jobs. And so all of them not grouped together to go to war. So from 1995 to 2003, when you're not in actual combat, you're training. So and then you're doing your job. See, an admin specialist in the Army, he spends about 80 to 90% of his day doing admin work, and some of it's geared towards moving to to a theater operation or combat or something like that, but it's all admin, and they're not out running around in the woods like I said, shooting at stuff and eating, living in the woods overnight. They go to work early in the morning, about 8 o'clock, after breakfast and PT, and they go home at 4:30, 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, go home to their family. Take the kids to school, go to a baseball game with the kids, study, doing these things like that everybody does. So there wasn't a gap. There was always training. You're always getting better, honing your skills. So remember, I said about 85%, 80% of the time. The other percent of your time, you're actually doing those things, managing your weapons and things of that nature.
Okay. So, did you ever serve abroad?
Yes, I went. I served in Germany. I served in Japan and Korea.
Okay. What were some of your experience that you remember while you were serving abroad?
Cultural, just cultural enrichment. Everywhere you go, you kind of like to get involved and immersed in the culture. In Germany, I loved the food. I love the festive nature of those other people there. In Korea, it was more. That was for me. That was a kind of tough time because I was in Korea. It's a different thing. That's a whole story. So if you get a chance to talk to somebody that served in Korea, got some time to talk about it. That's a whole. Korea is a whole different element because you're dealing with the North Koreans, and they say we're trying to make sure we keep the South Korea from going over to North Korea. That's why the Army's there, the U.S. Army's there. It's just one of those folklores. But Korea is always intense in Korea. So that's a different experience. But there's a lot of shopping going on in Korea.
Yeah. And
the Korean people, once you get to know them, they're really really good people. And then Japan, Japan was one of the nicest places and a place that never actually went to sleep. It was like a New York. And I just enjoyed my time there. Like I say, with Japanese, it's all about festivals, parades, and things like that. So they always have music and parades and something going. Time, yeah, something happening. And you learn a lot. You can learn a lot by going to Japan. You can learn a lot about American values versus Asian values. So it was a good cultural experience, and so I got a good chance to really see things that some people won't ever see. So
okay, another question, not one here. How would you say those were your experience, but as a African American man there, how would you say? How would you say your interactions with people of those different countries were?
I don't know what their intent was. I don't know how they perceive. I know you heard some things in any society you go to, and you try to immerse yourself, you're gonna get a little bit of some racial tensions, and that's true with even African Americans. Somebody that's not like us, and that's not an African American or something, and they come in and try to immerse yourself in our culture. We kind of look at them, but then there's the other side. That's just maybe the 2%. The other side is, I don't care where I went. When I was in Germany, from going to France, going to Germany, traveling over to not Amsterdam, but Italy, to Austria, all those places like that. In Korea, Japan, I only encountered, I say, 98% of the people that I kind of got to know, or just being out and about. They all loved African Americans.
Wow, males. That's interesting.
Males.
Oh.
African American males. There's a different story with African American females. This is a totally different thing. But for African American males, most of the population they welcome us with open arms. So with that said, I mean, I can go, at least for me, I know I can go just about anywhere overseas and be comfortable. Because I know how to deal with folks, and not necessarily just because I know how to deal with folks, but they are open to us. And the big thing is, when you go over there, you don't make fun of their culture, and you don't not try to speak their language. If you go there in the mindset of I'm going to try to talk and speak, the language and talk to folks and just kind of get to know them, you'll find out that they're just like us. Because you don't know the language and everything, you can't understand what the conversation is, or they won't include you in the conversation. But the conversation is just like any other conversation. You walk up and down the street, go to a mall, go to church. The conversations are all the same. It's all the same. It's just that you don't understand them and they don't understand you, and you're not trying to bridge that gap. You just kind of stick over here to myself and stick. But now the African American females, I don't know. Men in Korea love African American females. The Korean guys. Women, not so much.
I bet.
Not so much. Not so much.
They probably think, oh, you're taking our men, and then when they come here, we like, oh, they're taking our men.
I'm not gonna say that, but all I know is there's always some tension.
Oh wow.
Always some tension there.
That's interesting.
And German ladies, my sister-in-law is German. German ladies, they like African American females because they're trying to learn from them. And you'll find a lot of them actually have the same dialect as African American females, because I think there's some mimicking going on, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to, yeah. So it's interesting. That's like I said, that's a whole different subject.
I'm glad you kind of brought up Germany, because I'm actually thinking about going abroad to Germany.
Germany is beautiful.
I've been to Germany when I toured with my choir. We toured like the Baltic states, and then we did a little concert in Germany, but we really were in like Estonia and Finland and places like that. So I was in Frankfurt.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was really nice. I like that. Okay, so were you on the front line?
Was I on the front line? Pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much,
yeah. I can expound on that.
Okay.
Third ID, the band. Everybody says, "What band? The band going to war?" Yeah, the band does. And the band does has a mission, has a dual role in any conflict. One is security. The other one is once we get there and once things tension down, guess what we got to do? We got to make everybody happy. Everybody love music, and so that's the connect. I don't care where you go, what kind of people you dealing with. Music is the connector. And the Army knows that. So psychological warfare says that you got to have that band. Now there's some people, and I call them, I'll probably get crushed for this if anybody ever hear this stuff, but I call them idiots. Commanders that don't like bands, and some of the senior NCOs that don't like bands, they think they don't have no worth and everything like that. But I guarantee you, any commander, anybody will tell you that knows, that there are leaders. And study human dynamics, know that if you put food out and play some music, guess what? That's an open door. That opens, especially if I play music that you understand and you can appreciate. And that's what the bands do. And so, but in particular, frontline, we weren't necessarily on the front line, but we were wedged in between units. And engineers. If you look at the history of the Iraqi War in 2003, when y'all was watching TV and looking at things that's happening that done happen already, that was us. That was me. In 2003, I was right there on that line watching these, Iraqis, throw these little Scud missiles over at us. Because I was with the 3rd Infantry Division, I was Division D Main. The D Main is where the general kind of hovers. And we had to protect that D Main. That was the band's mission. We had to provide security for that D Main. And as we marched through Iraq, that was my mission. I was a first sergeant, and I was an EA at that time. EA, this is first sergeant. Okay. I was the first sergeant for the 3rd Infantry Division band, and my mission was, to support the commander, and his mission was to protect that D Main. So I was in charge of all the enlisted folks in the band, and pretty much was the main guy, I guess, to ensure that we provided that security and had everything in place. So right behind the engineers, when they went into the airport in Baghdad, the engineers went in. As soon as the engineers gave it all clear, we rolled up in there, and we was, it was some sticky points getting in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was some sticky points getting in there, and so so I was right there. I was right there where anything could happen. If anybody trying to wipe anything out, they wanted that general, and we were right there with them.
Wow.
And so so we were, every day was a different scenario.
Can you tell us about a combat action that you witnessed? If you want to.
I'll tell you a soft one.
Okay.
Okay, because some things you don't want to. It's in the history books and in firsthand information of any soldier is not going to tell you the horrific things or challenges that they had. And I didn't see anything that was I didn't see anything as far as combat action that was so horrific. It was some of the aftermaths of things that happened while I was kind of right there in the vicinity. One of the things was Karbala. It's called the Karbala. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Karbala Gap. And we had to go through that gap. It was a wedge. It was an enemy chokehold. In other words, it was a good place for them to ambush. And so we had to get through the Karbala Gap with about 600. I think it was like 600 serial convoy. That's like 600 vehicles, all lined up in a row, all moving in the same direction. And so I was in the front of that. I think I was the second vehicle in the front of that serial. But they had to, I was watching, we had to call for fire and call for air support to keep the fight off into the distance. So, as you're going through that Karbala Gap, you're looking over in a certain area in that town, and you're seeing all kind of chaos, just going down. They're doing their thing over there, while we trying to get all these vehicles through this one little area and pass this area to a safe point. And so, there's more. When we had ejected rams, that was a massacre. I'm gonna just leave it right there. That was a massacre of civilian people. That I'll leave it there. But those are the type of things you had to you kind of witness on a daily basis or occasionally or whatever. There's nothing like some of the people that had to get the honor. Unfortunate enough to get the Medal of Honor. I say unfortunate because they're not here. I'm quite sure they would love to be here with their families. But they did some amazing things in those Karbala Gaps and some of those other places that, Ramadi and in the airport in Baghdad. And these guys were, just like you and me, they can do just the same thing. They weren't superheroes, but they had their comrades in mind. They weren't trying to be heroic. That's just the nature of what they did, and they had some of them had to pay the ultimate sacrifice, just trying to help their buddies stay alive. So,
Okay. How did you feel witnessing the casualty? I'm sorry, am I speaking too low?
Yeah, how did I feel?
I'm sorry. How did you feel witnessing the casualties and the distractions and stuff like that during combat?
Well, I just give you this scenario. We were at Baghdad and we had to kind of clean up because they didn't leave anything. They took, we went in and we took and seized the airport in Baghdad. And but before the Iraqis left, they wanted to make sure that nothing was left that we could use. Cause I was looking at a couple of TVs. I was like, okay, I can watch some TV while I'm here. No, they destroyed it. They just about destroyed everything. And so they came to me and said, hey, we need a team to go out and put some, pick up people. And so I had the unfortunate task of, telling my soldiers, because I was the first sergeant, so I didn't necessarily had to go. So I had to tell them, so go do this, and they went and did that, and the look on their face when they came back told the whole story. So what I saw, I guess my mind is, closed some of that stuff down. Things I saw at Jet Rams, in Baghdad Airport and things like that. I can deal with it. But the look on their faces, some of the soldiers that never really, nobody really seen it. You think, soldier, you're a soldier, yeah. You're a person. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that. And you have compassion, on both sides, Iraqis and, and us. We all the same, but we were fighting, But to see them, go out, in their posture and come out with a different posture, that told the human story. You know what I'm saying? So.
Okay. Okay. What kind of friendships and camaraderie? Sorry, did you form while serving, and with whom?
I don't want to put nobody's name out, but there's a lot. Every student station you meet people, and then you have this cohort of people that you hang out with. Because the main thing is always gatherings. Mm-hmm. We love military guys. We love a backyard party. We love backyard barbecue. I don't care you just to say you're gonna doing barbecue. Come on, everybody gonna come over. Mm-hmm. So during those times, people in South Carolina, a guy in South Carolina I still keep in contact with, and another guy, or two guys in South Carolina. That was a good place there. South Carolina, Fort Jackson. Just keeping in touch with them, your family becomes, very close together. The kids, their parents, their sisters, their brothers. Just like anything. I mean, It's just like you don't have a whole bunch of friends. No one does, but you have a lot of acquaintances. Mm-hmm. And so just like anybody else, you formulate those friends, and over years it sticks the same. It stays the same. Just like any college kid right now, they're gonna have friends from high school they kind of keep up with. Then when they get to college, they make new friends in college, and then they kind of lose face with some of those guys in high school, and then they make friends with the more common denominators. That, like I like the word polarized groups. They get in that polarization with this person, and okay, they can jive with them, and then you go off to work in Wisconsin somewhere, in New York, and they over, and then you friend. It's a continuous building of friends, and at the end of the day, you like to say you go on your Facebook, man, I got 300 friends. No, you maybe have, over the course of your time, you may have 3 or 4 people that you really keep in touch with and form that camaraderie with. But the relationships that you have is still memorable, because some of the people you may not keep in touch with them, but every now and then you kind of call them up and say, hey, how you doing? I called a guy named, I called the guy the other day. He's at the School of Music. He's a commandant for the NCO Academy for the School of Music in Virginia. I called him up a couple of months ago. I haven't seen him in a while, but we had a good little conversation, and it was just that. We're not buddies or anything like that, but we're friends, and it gets to the point where any of those people like that, not the ones that's close that you make friends with and they're a lifelong friend, you talk to them almost every day or Facebook them or everything like that, but the ones that still are part of that legacy of yours and theirs, you can call them up and you can ask them for a favor or ask them to do something for you, and it's done.
Yeah.
So, and then there's others that you don't want to deal with them anymore. Just going down the road, keep moving, and keep it moving. It's been real, it's fun. See ya.
Yeah.
I think some of this question is geared towards, and I'm thinking, so now you're a sergeant, and so you're leading a group. So then there's some, I won't say loneliness, or so you don't have versus everybody being of the same
sergeant
rank.
Majors, sergeant majors. There's a core with the sergeant majors. We go through the academy. I was class 55 sergeant majors academy. I don't even know it. I can't even remember what class number they're on now. They may be like 60 something. I was in class 55, and That's how many sergeant major class. And sergeant major's academy it's an executive college. It's a year-long residency in El Paso at Biggs Army Air Base. Biggs Army Air Base. I don't think they call it anymore now. It's all Fort Lewis. I'm at Fort Bliss now. But sergeant major's academy is where the top of the line of enlisted going to go. Because only 1% of the Army ever going to make the rank of E9. I kind of glorify that and everything because I'm part of it and I'm proud of that. But it's an elite corps. And they're your advisors. Those are the people that actually advise the generals and talk to the media and condolence with the family members and things like that. It's a very important job. When you make sergeant major, we respect each other so much we don't get in each other's lane. Like I'm Army bands, so sergeant major from engineering corps wouldn't necessarily get in my lane. And then some of them, their positions keep them moving. Sergeant majors are always doing something, whether in a ceremony or going to an event or going to sitting down talking to soldiers or going to reserve training or recommending and advising command. We're always busy, so it's very little time. So sergeant majors going to get more attached with the commanders than other enlisted. So you get that dynamic going there. But even with friendships with your commander or other sergeant majors, it's a little sketchy. So it's lonely at the top. That's what I'm trying to say. It's lonely at the top. You're a one-man show. Everybody wants to get a hold of you. Everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to, and you have to kind of gauge their ulterior motive. Why? Because you have power. It's true power, and you got to be careful how you exercise and deliver that power, because sergeant major's word is what we call bond. It's the truth. It's researched. His or her recommendation, their knowledge is researched, and before they give you advice, is well prepared advice, and so that's why the commanders have to they rely on that because they need something right then and there because the enlisted force run the Army. The officers kind of manage it and kind of say this is what we want to do, and the enlisted force go out and execute that. Well, in that execution, you have all kind of levels of leadership, and in that levels of leadership, you have all kind of different influences and things that people can get done. And so when the sergeant major says this is how this is going to affect our fighting force, our working force, the commander will definitely look on that information. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't. Most times when they don't, they fail. But when they do use it, and most times they're successful because the sergeant major's been there. I've been a private. I've been a specialist. I've been an E5. I've been an E6. I've been an E7, E8, E9. I know the family. I know how it's going to affect your family because I went through it with my family when I was E6 and you made that decision. It's that sergeant major is there talking to a commander who's only probably done command one time, and now he's a brigade or lieutenant battalion commander. Brigade commanders are a little bit more easier because they understand because they had more command time, and the general officers definitely had more command time, so they definitely know, to listen. Those other officers, they don't necessarily be with the soldiers. They kind of be with officers doing officer stuff, and there's a difference.
But then, so did they not go through the process like everybody else, or they've been out of the game so long?
No, it's not necessarily a matter out of the game. It's to what they do on a daily basis. See, enlisted folks, we gotta remember, the key word is we run the Army. We're the working force for the Army. Even in management position, supervisor position, enlisted folks run the place. Officers manage the place. So they're not necessarily engaged in the day-to-day. It's like, you ever seen that show, what's the boss? It's called something like the boss or something like that. Where the boss don't know what's going on.
Undercover
boss. It's kind of like that scenario.
Okay.
They know about the organization, but they don't know that
real.
They don't know the real things that's going on in the organization. Guess who knows everything?
Sorry.
Two people.
Mm-hmm.
2 people in the organization know everything.
Mm-hmm.
That first sergeant E8
Mm-hmm.
or that E9.
Okay.
They know the organization because they've been there before.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? They nosy.
Mm-hmm.
They get down in the weeds, and they can get down in the weeds to find the truth. So when things come up, the sergeant major is going to be always there next to that commander, not necessarily with the enlisted. He's going to be right there next to that commander. He's representing the enlisted. He's taking care of the enlisted, but he or she is actually, right there so that commander won't make a mistake as far as their judgment calls or information that they receive to so they can make a decision on the action that they may have to take. The sergeant major is there telling them, okay, this is what it is.
Okay. How did you stay in touch with family and friends back at home?
Phone. And when we had computers, when computers were designed and invented, we started using a little email,
So not like you can Skype today.
Yeah.
To work on all that.
In Iraq, I know you probably want to kind of go with that. In Iraq, they had a phone system, set up through communications and the signal folks. That's another job. The AT&T operators and stuff like that. That's the signal guys. They set up phone lines and everything like that, and I just call them, just get on the phone and call them. It wasn't very difficult. Timeliness of it depending on what was going on in the combat action as far as that goes, or pre-combat. So limited conversation, limited phone time. But it was very easy. And in today's society, because 2003 was a change, was a turnover. Now, soldiers. I had a soldier call me from Afghanistan, trying to get his school stuff worked out before he got out. And it was very easy for him to call me.
What about the time difference?
Right. I know he was probably late at night or something like that. But he called me a couple of times, whatever. So it's not hard. Yeah.
Did you receive packages?
Yeah, you always get those little care packages and little goodies and pictures and things like that, and schools writing to the units and stuff like that, and they adopt a unit programs in the elementary school. And that's always wonderful. In basic training, mom and dad try to send you something. Now that's a fiasco, because what's going to happen is you're going to get this big box of candy and brownies and all this kind of stuff, and you got to take that out there to the formation, because the drill sergeant going to see what's in the box. Because you can't have paraphernalia and stuff like that. People sneak you stuff. So they're going to check those boxes out. Okay, so you got all this candy and goodies and everything like that. You got to give it to everybody in the platoon. Everybody get to eat.
Oh man!
Everybody get.
No.
Yeah. So you don't send care packages to basic training.
Have you seen men like cry having to give all the good? Because I would cry like no.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
I mean, out like really like.
Not necessarily, because it's a rapid fire environment. 8 weeks, and by day 3 or 4, you kind of get it. We all got to pull together, and so you it's amazing. I wish I could. Maybe I'll do this, and I'll try to do a doctorate degree or something like that, and do some studies and to show and demonstrate how fast a rapid fire environment gets you to come together. Just like 9/11. In one day, the whole nation kind of came together.
That's one.
Yeah, and so people forgot their petty stuff, their differences, and they forgot. They were different, and the images of it. I caution myself how I say this, but I want to make sure I clarify it though. One of the pictures that I saw coming out of 9/11 was when those folks coming out and all that smoke and stuff and soot and dust was. And everybody's face was covered, and I know I saw that in a movie. I know it's on a movie somewhere. One of them crazy movies. World, destruction or something like that. but it was the truth because you seen it. That was real. Everybody was the same. In one second, everybody was the same. Everybody had the same problem. Everybody had the same situation. Everybody had the same, concerns. Everybody was the same, and so it's kind of like that in basic training. So everybody gonna come together real quick. So it's like 3 or 4 days. Is everybody's like, okay, let's get it together because you can't shine boots. And what's happening is because you can't shine boots, we keep getting dropped for push-ups. So you don't shine boots, but you can do belt buckles real good, or you can fold clothes and stuff real good. So you fold clothes, give me all of your boots, I'll polish your boots, you fold my clothes. And set them up in my wall locker for me. And so it was that kind of teamwork, and that's what it's all about. We know that's the drill sergeants and the Army knows that's what's going to happen, so that's why they do it. Because you got to depend on your teammates, you got to depend on your team members, and you got to pull together real quick. Because day 2, you find out real quick. You trying to buck for position, how you get those alpha males. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna show them I'm really good. I'm show them, and guess what? You get dogged out. Everybody else get what they call dogged out. Means you get do push-ups and flutter kicks and all kind of stuff. And so, all that posturing, like you can beat the whole world, and you want to show off in front of the drill. So drill sergeant, look what I can do. That's very frowned upon. And by day 2, you can kind of figure that out real quick. And day 3, I ain't gonna do that no more. I gotta calm it down some.
Okay. So I'm gonna skip through a few questions. We're kind of running low on time with the video.
I'm sorry, I talk a lot.
No, it's totally fine. It's totally fine. I'm actually enjoying this. We're gonna skip on how was it when you came home. How did you return home?
Different.
That's a whole new person.
My wife told me that I was, and I didn't realize it. I was still in Hinesville, that I was guarding the house. Because I would go to the back door, because we had a big field in our backyard. Well, it was a big backyard, kind of sort of, and then kind of pushed back in the back. There was this like wooded area, like a little sanctuary, bird sanctuary. They weren't gonna build nothing back there, anything like that. But she said I was going to the door all the time, looking out the door, and I was on guard duty. I was still on guard, looking. Just it was a habit. I had to guard something. I had to be different. My thinking changed the way I thought about things. My memory was gone. Because I was still over there trying to wondering what was going, so my concentration levels, peaked at different places and everything like that. So, I was different. I mean, I thought about things quite different from I thought before I went, taking things for granted and whatnot, So, it just came out different.
How did you readjust to civilian life in America? Was it hard?
Yeah, readjustment is always hard. See, now, coming back from a war is not really necessarily hard adjusting. There's a difference. See, most of the soldiers that you're going to probably interview, if they're here and they didn't retire, you don't hear the word retire, then you're going to hear a different thing. Or they say they still serving even after they've been in for a while. They've been in 15, like, those recruiters were here. I'm quite sure Sergeant Moore has about 15, 16, 17 years in and something like that. He's been to Iraq and whatnot, but he's still continuing on. His story's going to be different. His adjustment, he's going to tell you, is different because if I'm still wearing the uniform and I come back and I continue on, my adjustment is normal because everybody around me is normal because they've been there or they've done that or they're getting ready to go. So that norm there is constructed and is boxed in and it stays in the military. Where the real problem actually happens, and I think people miss this all the time. See, now some soldiers they'll go over, they'll get in and stay 4 years, go over and they come back. They had a rough time over there, or they just didn't really adapt to the Army, or that was too much for them. That's why I say I question people's motive to jump into a fight And then talking about they coming back, they're gonna be a real hero and all this other stuff, and they go over and they get out real quick. I question it most. Their story is gonna be totally different because they didn't really get the Army life. They got combat, and sitting over there just kind of waiting because some of them get over there and they're not doing anything. You think, okay, they're over there fighting? No, they're not. They're not necessarily fighting. Small percentage of them actually gonna see bullets coming their way. Okay, other ones are supporting and stuff like that, and they don't even see the battles. So they come back and they tell all these stories about this and stories about that, and most of it's not true. And they only been in 3 years, 4 years, or something like that, and they can't really tell you the Army story. They really can't. I mean, they can tell you their story and what happened to them and things of that nature, but the true Army story is spending time in there, time enough to actually get acclimated to a unit. It could be 4 years, acclimated to a unit and living the Army life from the training process to going to school, to family life and everything like that, to going to combat. Because remember, going to Iraq and things like that is only 1 year. It's not 4 years. You don't go 4 years straight. That's you're not going to do that. So you're going over there 1 year and then come back and then reacclimating yourself to your family after a year of being over there by yourself. And everybody's different. Everybody don't have they don't see things the same. The reaction to a fly landing on the table, you and I gonna have different responses to that. Okay, so that's the same thing. I ain't gonna say the same thing, but that's kind of like when I'm gonna have a different response to my time in Iraq versus your time in Iraq. The true story comes, one of the big stories is the transition is getting out of the military after a long period of time. Not being in combat a long period of time, being in the military a long period of time.
And transitioning
to the that's the true transition, and that's the true point where people have the most difficulty. You remember now, I was in 1985, 2013. I spent a lifetime in the military. So when I got out of the military, I mean, I every day in the military, I come home, I go to Walmart, go to Kmart, the mall, the movies, every day. I'm still a soldier. So it's not like you don't post and you can't leave and everything. That's totally fictitious. You leave every day. You go home. You live a life. But I know what to expect in the military. So when you get out of the military and you can't, you're not going back on post every day. You're not doing this. And for me, like being in this area, that's not a military base around. Dobbins Air Force Base, that's a reserve unit. Warner Roberts, that's way down the street. There's no military facility here. McPherson closed down. So getting out, my transition and transformation from the Army was tough for me. I didn't want to ever admit that at one particular time, but I'm comfortable admitting it now. It was tough. It was a rough period because all those things, all those dynamics in society that people go through and you hear about in the newspaper, I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to people being racist. I wasn't used to people, groups of people being polarized. This community, the only thing you see over here is African American. The only thing you see, I'm not used to that anymore. Being from Fort Lauderdale, I saw it all the time. Haitians, they were still over here. Cubans were still over here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida now. Greeks were still over here. African Americans over here, and white Americans, they over here. And they had their groups. They had their section of the city. That's why I left Fort Lauderdale. But coming out of the military, and seeing that again,
Would you say the military was kind of like a temporary blinder to those issues?
It wasn't a temporary blinder. It was more of a reality of what America actually could be. See, so this is not normal. People, human dynamics is normal. What you feel, what I feel, how we come together, and how we kind of live our life in a cohesive manner is very achievable if you have norms, discipline, and standards that everybody got to follow. And the letter of the law is the letter of the law, and you abide by it, and you follow the rules, and you trust people that don't look like you. Just trust them enough to just sit down and talk with them for a while, get to know them without any aspirations of trying to hurt them or harm them or belittle them or anything like that. that's the true human dynamic. That's the true, for me, that's the true American way. Because we're the only nation really that's this large to have so many different people in it. And so, because you go to Germany, it's Germans. You go to Asia, and it's Asian. So I don't think people. To me, in my opinion, I don't think people out here living in a false way of things. Even though it's true to them, it's not what it could be.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of interesting because you don't really hear about how. You don't really hear about when it comes to military. When you hear stories about people in the military, you don't really hear that how unified you guys were. Not as far as just in combat and stuff like that, but you really got along pretty much. And when you hear stuff, you hear about people doing some horrendous stuff sometimes, like taking pictures with dead Muslims and stuff like that. That's stuff I see. So when I see that, I'm like,
yeah. We're all media.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm like, people.
No, that's the media. That's the media. Looking for stuff and putting it out there, and that does happen. And I'm going to go back to what I said before. I question people's motives for jumping in, trying to go to the military that quick just to go and say I'm going to go, because that tells me. I want to look a little bit more profoundly into your life before you get in the military to see what you were doing as a civilian, and now you're wearing a uniform, and you're going over here just doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was really crazy after. Now I was young. I was like in second grade when 9/11 happened, but my mother, she didn't really guard me from real life issues that was going on. So I did hear the real stuff, especially from my godfather. He never sugarcoated anything for me. So when hearing about it's still with recent stuff. Like I like seeing the videos where the guys, they do the little pop-up dances, flash mobs and stuff. But I like hearing about that stuff. And then this stuff, this was like, I was like, well, this is crazy how when I saw a picture of this guy killed a little boy. He was away in Iran, Iraq. Are those like? Let me not ask those the same thing. Those are not the same thing. I'm sorry. They just sound the same.
But what happens is this: you have a situation where lack of leadership, and people that are supposed to be responsible get lax, and they do that because the Army is a graduated process as far as leadership, and so when you see those things, some of those things like that, where they're hazing and doing that kind of stupid stuff, where the media jumped on it, and they're looking for that. That's not, that don't tell the whole story of the entire military, or in my particular case, the Army. It's just maybe one isolated incident where somebody's doing something stupid and lack of leadership. And lack of responsibility to those people that's on the ground, because every soldier is taught to be a leader. If there's absence of orders or absence of leadership, somebody takes charge. And if that person is not well groomed in leadership by his seniors, that's people that's above him. I don't like to say superiors because nobody's superior to anybody. But his senior person is not there, and that means that senior person didn't tell them or teach them hard enough and spend enough time with them. And that's the key thing right there. Leaders in the military, leaders going to spend time with you. Not just, okay, go do what I tell you to do, and they go in the office or go somewhere else and hang out. They're going to spend some time. It's quality time. The quality time is teaching you how to behave, how to keep standards, and how to keep bad things from happening. And so that's that.
And why it's important for us to capture these interviews so that we get some on the ground, the real stories, not just what the media is putting out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's do a little reflection.
Okay.
What are some life lessons that you learned in the military? Serving in the military.
Life lessons I learned: study. I've learned that in order for you to succeed in anything, you got to be a student of what you're a part of. Military is a science. Leadership is an exercise in leadership. I learned a lot about being leadership. I learned so much about leadership. That's what my degree is in, leadership. Being a student of processes, how did the human dynamic work? I learned a lot about that. I reflect on my culture, learn and appreciate, to be able to appreciate going anywhere. That's why I'm so eager to continue to travel and go do stuff. I gotta wait till my kids get out of school first, though. So that's a different story there. But yeah, so reflect. I reflect on just the kindness of the human spirit when I go out and play and see kids and older people from all walks of life just walk up to you and give you a hug and say thank you. You made my day. You made me feel a little bit better. As being a musician. So that was a rewarding thing for me. So.
How has your military service impact your feelings about war and the military in general?
Okay, military had an impacted, and being a part of the process of being, in the Army and going through the process of going through war and coming back and all that transitional stuff. I know this. History kind of tells the story of what's going to happen tomorrow. And so, from the days or whatever, man is going to be motivated by a lot of different things to do horrific things to others. And so as far as America, what we stand for in war, I just think that we're needed. And not to be cliche-ish, but we're needed and we're going to be there all the time. Because if somebody don't stand up for right, and if we lose our face value as far as standing up for right, there's not going to be a world monitor of somebody that has the capability of saying, okay, look, let's put this way. United Nations, I get it, we all got to work collaboratively, but I think America still is in the forefront of being the leader, and we need to continue to tighten that shot group up and make sure that we remain a force to be reckoned with, so that we can prevent these big wars that we have seen in the past, World War II, World War I, and stuff like that. So.
Okay. Oh, I had already asked him that question.
Did you? Okay.
Yes. And last question. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will hear or view this video or interview? Sorry.
Through this video, I hope everybody got the picture that that the Army, I say military, but the Army in particular, is just like any other organization with true dynamics, true working skills. I'm very disgruntled at this point where people take military, that same MP, and take that training and say, well, you got it in the military, it don't count here in the civilian world, when it's the same thing. I hope people get from this video that we're military is just like is a smaller polarized group of what society should kind of aspire to be. Even though we still have our quirks and we have our pains and we have things that we're ashamed of, and we need to show a little bit more responsibility in cleaning up. But for the most part, we work hard to kind of show the American people that we're proud, because people that put the uniform on come from all different walks of life, and when they come together, they can see how powerful they can actually be in keeping America safe, people safe, and also just living trying to live the American dream. Just be a holistic person and accommodating to everyone, and that musicians in the military play a tremendous role in the support of the combat soldier, and I think they are just as important as the M16 that they carry around to protect themselves. So I just want people to, hopefully they get that, people all over the world are the same. You got to embrace people. You got to engage and interact with folks, you know, from their perspective to your perspective. And I think the world would be a better place if we just kind of do that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Singletary, you went in single, and now you've talked to us about kids, marriage, but we don't have the love story. When did the wife and how does family and military come in?
My wife, and I want this to go on record. I want this one to go on record. My wife been following me ever since I was in high school. So she,
it's a good love story.
Yeah, she latched on, and you know.
And her name is
Daphne.
Yeah.
And Daphne, my oldest daughter Samisha. My oldest son is Jazz, and then there's Deja, and then there's Jalen. So 2 boys, 2 girls, and so I went into the Army. She was still in high school. When she got out of high school, I went back and told her, "Come on, let's go," and we've just been going.
Did she go with you abroad?
I'm sorry.
Did she go with you abroad?
Yeah. No. She didn't go abroad because she couldn't go to she decided not to go to Korea because of family. We had little babies and everything coming and going, and just and then she didn't go to Japan because the kids were getting the process through high school. We wanted them to go through have that high school experience, instead of jumping around being like the typical Army, what they call Army brat, jumping from high school to high school. We want to kind of get some stability. So, and we want to kind of start building a home, somewhere in the community. We want to start to get a sense of community. So she stayed in from Japan, but other than that, everywhere we'll pack it up and we'll roll out.
And then the last question is about what you've done since your military. So kind of tell us what you're doing here.
Okay.
Your
I'll give you a speed drill. Before I got out in 2012, I started working on my own restaurant, me and my wife. And we did that. Got a restaurant started out in Covington, Georgia. So when I got out, I went right into entrepreneurship and running my own business and everything like that. Did very well. It's called Singletary's Grill. It was a good, nice little restaurant and everything like that. But we decided to. It was just time consuming because I was a musician, I was a mechanic. Now I'm a restaurant owner coming out of we had a good concept and everything like that. But it was just I didn't understand how time consuming it was, and that I didn't want that lifestyle. After being a sergeant major, getting calls at 3:00 in the morning and doing all these things like that, I didn't want to spend 20 hours, a day. Slaving over a restaurant trying to build it up, and it just too much. And so we closed that down and start doing catering. So I started doing some other little work here and there, and then finally eventually landed a position here working with veterans. Because as soon as I saw it, I was kind of curious about it, and I'm gonna go back and help soldiers because there's no military base around here. It's kind of hard to get in that culture again. I said this is the next best thing, and I wanted to get into higher education anyway. That was one of my goals as far as trying to finish up a doctorate degree one day and things like that. This will give me an opportunity to kind of reach some of those other goals that I had and things that I never got a chance to accomplish while I was in the military. So I turned in this direction here. So that's what I've been doing. So
and which is
military outreach coordinator. For Atlanta Metropolitan State College, serving and helping veterans matriculate from freshmen all the way until they leave this institution and beyond. Just rebuilding this program. This program was a girl named Colonel Quick was here before. He left and went off to do some other things for himself, but it was vacant for a little while. So I had to kind of rebuild the program. So that's what I'm in the process of doing now, just trying to rebuild the veterans population and program and ensure that they have the tools and the things that they need to successfully transition from the military, transition to a college, and actually graduate. So
wonderful. Well, we appreciate your service.
All right,
thank you for your time this afternoon.
Welcome.
And for helping an Atlanta Metropolitan student out with her homework assignment.
No problem.
Thank you.
I'm sorry we're kind of too long, but I want to make sure you get the real deal before you start talking to everybody else. And they give you the short story. The Army is a great place to be.
She was a great interviewer.
Thank you.